This is Outside of New York. In-depth discussions with members of the art world who live and work outside of New York. And here's your host, Craig Gould.
Riley Holloway is a Dallas-based artist whose dynamic portraits capture the faces of the world around him. A 2015 Hunting Prize finalist, he has attended the Art Institute of Dallas, the Florence Academy of Art, and the University of Texas at Arlington. In 2013, Holloway completed a unique residency at the Fairmont in Dallas, which was accompanied by a solo exhibition in the hotel's gallery at the completion of his time there. He has been in a number of group exhibitions and repeatedly featured in solo exhibitions at Fort Works Art in Fort Worth. In addition, he completed a prominent public art mural commission for a municipal court building in downtown Fort Worth, and was recently added to the Dean Collection, a contemporary art collection owned by hip-hop producer Kasseem Dean, aka Swizz Beatz, and his wife, singer-songwriter Alicia Keys. I recently sat down with Riley at his studio in Dallas where we discussed growing up in an artistic home, studying in Florence, the impact of the Right Artist Residency, and what it's like to have Cedric Huckabee as your mentor.
And it's something me and Cedric have actually he's been helping me a lot with lately. But what it's going to be is pretty much interviewing people that I'll be painting.
Right.
Talking about history of the area, pretty much.
Right.
So, for example, I'll touch on Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Right.
And find out what impact did that have locally.
Right.
And so one gentleman I talked to, he mentioned that, we had our own Black Wall Street down here pretty much.
Wow.
And I was like, really? Yeah, so his name is Bob Ray Sanders.
Oh, yeah. I remember Bob Ray Sanders.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember Bob Ray when he was a big part of it. He used to be on the radio all the time. He had talk
Really?
Yeah.
What?
He was involved at KERA, but he was also he was a radio personality at one point, an active part of the community. But
he told me none of that. Okay.
But see, I'm from a different generation, so I remember Bob Ray from when
Whoa. Okay,
but
Bob.
I assume it's the same Bob Ray Sanders. I mean, how many?
Right.
How many?
This is an interesting name combination.
Right.
It's not too many Bob Ray Sanders. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
But
cool.
awesome. No, but I remember reading about that vibrant African American community in Tulsa, and its unfortunate demise, and everything. So there's a similar history in Dallas, kind of an untold history.
Yeah,
there.
from the way he tells it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna find out more about that. So I felt like he was a great place to start.
Sure.
Right. So yeah. So that's the project I'm doing. I have some sculpture in it. I'll just touch on historical events.
Sure.
And I'm pretty much gonna let the people that I meet kind of lead the project.
Yeah.
So Bob said he has some people he'll point me towards. And,
Right.
And so I just start that way. So it almost feels like investigative.
Nice.
Journalism.
Yeah,
a bit different.
that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so it should be fun. Just from the small conversation I had with him, I learned a ton.
Right.
So I can't wait to actually sit down and do a real interview.
Yeah.
And get it going. Like, it's gonna be fun.
Awesome. Awesome. So Riley, I really appreciate you being willing to sit down and talk and share where you've been and where you're going. So where you've been, you started in California as a small child, is that right?
Yeah. I was born in California.
Yeah. But how long was it before you made it to Texas?
About 5 years old.
Okay, so you're a Texan.
Yeah, I'm a Texan. Yeah, I grew up in Arlington.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what was that like? Was it an artistic home or?
Yeah, my mom actually is an artist too. She doesn't really practice anymore. I tried to get her back into it, but I mean, when I was 4, we started with drawing our own coloring book pages, coloring them in, to her setting up still lives of like stuffed animals I had, and me doing watercolor painting.
That is awesome.
Yeah, she really set me up.
Right.
Right. In the best way possible.
Right. So have you been setting up your kids?
A little bit. Yeah, my daughter right now, she's 3, and she's more so into yoga.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her thing is yoga. So we signed her up for yoga and ballet. You know, like I would randomly, when I was young, I'd randomly ask to draw or color.
Right.
She's like, can we turn on yoga?
Right.
And I'm like, all right, turn on yoga. So she keeps it up one day. We'll help her get a little yoga studio or something one day.
Right.
But that's where it seems like her passion is so far.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And so, so your mom. So, what kind of work did your mom do? Like, was it oil painting or? What?
Man, she did a good amount. So she did oil painting, a lot of watercolors. She did a lot of pastel drawings in the sketchbook. It was all figurative.
Yeah.
Also, she had a fashion background. She went to school for fashion, and she did a lot of sewing and things like that. But a lot of it was illustrations, so fashion illustrations. She also worked for. I forgot what company she worked for, but she was doing page layout.
Right.
Back in the day where there was no computer software.
All manual. Right?
All manual, yeah. She was drawing the whole front page advertisement, and then they were going based off those drawings. I found her portfolio not too long ago, actually.
Right.
It's pretty fascinating. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So because of that, I almost went into graphic design, which I still use at times. You know, not much anymore. Now that painting's kind of doing it for the family, but yeah. And she sculpted too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's this clay sculpture she did of me. It was just a bust of me.
Right.
And that's gone now because it stayed in my room after a while.
Right. So I mean, the majority of the work I see you do is 2-dimensional, but you know, there is a bust here.
Yeah.
So is that an active part of your practice, or is that something you dabble with?
It's something I've been dabbling with that I'm gonna add to the practice.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll be adding that to the practice very, very soon.
Right.
One of the ways that I'll be doing it is I've kind of fallen in love with the idea of sculpting with plaster.
Right.
You know, so I don't know exactly how to do that yet, but I know how to make a plaster cast and mold, that sort of thing. Just from advice from Michael O'Keefe. He's been the main one kind of teaching me sculpture.
Right.
All right, so we're gonna like fingers crossed on sculpture.
Right.
I have a ways to go.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think that what do you think about that transition from 2D to 3D? I mean, I mainly worked 2D. You know, took a class where they were asking us to do busts. And I felt like my 2D background, and knowledge of proportions was like carrying over.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you feel like it's there's some of those same things apply?
Oh yeah. Because I always think of drawing and understanding proportions. Anatomy translates over to across different mediums, right? So crossing over into sculpting, it was very familiar, right? In a different way, right? Because it's still 3-dimensional, right? But having a grasp of anatomy and things, it kind of lends itself. Like I probably would have been completely lost if I didn't have that knowledge base, right? But it's also what I found interesting is when I started to get a little more comfortable with sculpting, it felt like how I paint, placing the way I place paint, right? To kind of paint the figure, right? So it was the same way with this sculpture up here with this bust. It was kind of like just placing paint.
Sure. And
in that way, it felt very familiar.
Right. Absolutely. So, so you grow up in Arlington, go to high school in Arlington. Then what happens?
Went to Art Institute of Dallas.
Okay.
2007. Still trying to decide if that was a mistake or not, but I don't think so.
What? There sounds like there's a bigger story there.
Yeah.
What would make you? Well, if you would choose to answer that question, what would make you say that?
I would say, well, one is I went back and forth between animation and graphic design. Okay. Right. It was a good thing going to graphic design because I ended up using that a bit later in life.
Right.
But I left there because I was learning how to paint the entire time. I was in my apartment, just kind of buying books, DVDs, watching videos on YouTube, like time-lapse videos, to see, understanding the importance of how to start a portrait, how to finish it. And so I did that, and there's this painting I have behind this stack that I did where I was like, oh, wow, that's a style I'm into, that I always love looking at. And I accomplished it. So I was like, well, you know what? I just did this, and I love this, and I've been doing this. I think I'm going to leave. Right. And so I go to academic advice. I'm like, look, I don't want to do graphic design anymore. He's like, well, animation? I was like, no, I think I'm going to drop out.
Right.
And of course, everybody cautioned me to that. But I think it was a good choice. At the time, it felt like a good choice. Right. Nowadays, I would have said I can do both. Right. Just having more experience, I could have continued to paint and got the degree. Right. So now trying to go back to UTA. Right. I'm having to start completely over because none of the credits transferred. So I had to start over from Algebra 1. Wow. In English 1. Because, creative writing and creative geometry just was not there for, UTA at all. Yeah. So it wasn't that great in that aspect, but I met some really good people. Like my best friend who was the best man at my wedding, I met there. The academic advisor I had, Dwayne Neros, was much more than academic advice. He gave a lot of advice. So, those were the good things out of it. But now it's just this debt and, and nothing to really show for it, right?
Right. Well, do you feel like you may wind up making... Because I know that there are some painters that I know that make animation part of their practice. Right. Like they'll, their exhibits will include, X number of paintings and then, a couple of animations that, wind up being installed. Have you ever thought about taking your style of painting and, transforming it into, or utilizing that in your practice?
Not too much animation. But illustration,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that shows up a good amount, and I think in the way of how I handle the figure and how I handle line work. Right. How heavy the line work is. When I was first learning to paint, that was like a big no-no to flatten out your drawing. Right. But now it's sort of this tool I use, and it kind of became stylistic now. Sure. It's to have the line work pretty heavy as the way that I do. So that helped. Color theory. Composition, things like that translated over to oil painting, I think. So those things were useful, right? Especially the color theory part. I still rely on that pretty heavily.
I see it going on in the painting right behind you, And so,
yeah. I have like a little color wheel app on my phone.
Right. So you go to... So when did you decide to leave the Art Institute of Dallas? So like what, 2009 or something?
Around 2009.
Okay. And you start making, you just kind of head down the path of making paintings in your own space, or what are we doing at that point?
That's the interesting part. After I did the portrait that I say was contributed to me dropping out, I actually dropped painting for a while, for about 2 years, and I picked up a sketchbook that I did nothing but anatomy drawings. I just got kind of obsessed with drawing the figure, right? So from 2009 to like 2011, that's all I was doing. And I remember thinking, I'm leaving Art Institute, maybe I should look for another school. Right. So my parents being great, they let me go try out this workshop, 3-month workshop in Florence, Italy. Oh, wow. Yeah. And so I went and did that. No, I think it was a month, not 3 months. I think it was a month. And so I went and did that for a while and got a lot of confirmation from that. Sure. Right. The things I was working on in my sketchbook, they let me know I was going on the right track for that.